The following episode contains sensitive topic information that may not be appropriate for young listeners, as well as religious or other views that may not reflect those of the Sirens team.
Hello, hello, hello out there, Sirens fans. Welcome to Sirens of the Supernatural. So, how are y'all doing, Lindsay, Ron? Good week?
I'm doing good, recovering from those brutal attacks I had last week. Had several stab wounds and then got attacked by a dinosaur. So I'm starting to feel a little better.
I'm surprised you're doing this well already.
I
Quick
know.
turnaround.
It's slow. It's slow
Yeah.
going, but I think I'm going to get there.
And if our listeners, if we have any listeners that don't know what we're referring to, go back and watch the last two episodes. And you'll see Ron get attacked by a T-Rex and stabbed by Michael Myers and all kinds of things. It's great.
Yeah.
It was horrifying. Horrifying. I still have nightmares.
Traumatized.
Nightmares.
For real.
And of course, last week's episode was really exciting because we had Southern Research Society paranormal team members on, and we talked with them. And you'll be hearing more from us and from them about the Nickerson Sneed House and maybe an on-site investigation very near future. So stay tuned for that. And tonight we are just going to dive right in, give you guys a little bit of a shorter episode than we normally have been doing. And we are going to be,
We'll see, hopefully.
fingers crossed. We are going to be talking about mimics and tulpas. Now, I don't know if you've heard of these two particular phenomena, but they're really interesting. This is some really interesting stuff. And
I feel like they're more obscure than other things. Like they're not as well known.
Right. And although I've been seeing things about mimics more so lately on TikTok, I hadn't really heard about them. Well, I had, but I didn't realize I had. But I hadn't heard a lot of people talking about them. Not a lot of other paranormal podcasts are talking about these things either. So we thought this would be kind of a cool, interesting, unique topic to cover. So we're going to dive right in, and I'm going to do a little bit of summarizing what paranormal mimics are, because when I said mimics, when your dad Lindsay asked me what we were going to do for the topic this week, and I said mimics, he said mimes, and I was like, no, not mimes. So I don't reckon he's heard of mimics either.
Yeah, but I think we should do an episode on mimes because they could also be part of the paranormal world. They're a little strange.
They are
a little
creepy.
Unusual. We can have Dad as a guest.
Yeah.
And he can dress up as a mime.
Oh, well. Yeah, that'd be something. We'd have a visual for sure.
Why did he even say mimes? Mimes?
Yeah, I don't know.
We're doing an episode on mimes, Dad.
Yeah, I know. It was so funny. That's what he thought we were doing an episode on. So that just goes to show you he hasn't heard of mimics either.
Yeah.
So, I'm just summarizing some of what I found online in this first little bit. It says mimics are shape-shifting entities that possess the uncanny ability to mimic the appearance, mannerisms, and voices of other beings, including humans. In most situations, the phenomenon is first heard as a disembodied voice that sounds just like someone a person knows, usually a loved one or someone close to them. So what you're getting is you're hearing a voice, and sometimes it could sound like your own voice, or it could sound like the voice of someone you live with who is not home at the time, or your own voice. I saw a TikTok video where this lady was at home by herself. I think, Lindsay, you said you saw this one too.
That. Yeah, I've seen that.
And she was like, so I was cleaning the house and I'm home by myself, and I heard my own voice calling to me from the other room. And she said, I'm just waiting. She was in the kitchen. She's like, I'm just waiting to see if it'll happen again. So she's like, and then she's telling like what happened. And then all of a sudden you hear, hello, from the other room. And it sounds just like her. And she was so freaked out. So to me, this is kind of on the same creep level as doppelgangers. And I don't like a doppelganger,
Yeah.
but this is kind of weird too. It's kind of that same kind of weird. So on Reddit, Birdie Snyder, username Birdie Snyder, was answering a question someone had sent in about mimics. And he said this. He said there's a type of demon that is actually called a mimic demon. It will often start out by copying the voice of someone who you live with or someone that's close to you. You will hear it say your name or some other form of address that is common for that person to call you, like sweetie or whatever, nickname, whatever. It can also say other things. And normally this happens when you're alone or when you know that the other person is not around. The mimic does this to incite fear, which is a type of energy that they feed off of. The more you fear it, the more you acknowledge it, the stronger it becomes. Mimics can even appear in the physical form of someone you know, but will often get the voice of that person confused with the voice of someone else you know. Being able to actually see a mimic means that it has grown stronger. And he said the best thing to do, other than seeking spiritual help, is to ignore it. Don't react when you hear it. Don't let yourself become agitated by it. Pretend it doesn't exist. If you don't feed it, it will weaken. Burning lavender incense is also helpful for maintaining a calm atmosphere. It's wise to seek out assistance in this situation if you are experiencing these things because, yes, like all negative entities, they are harmful. Okay, that's what he had to say. Now, I've never heard of a mimic being equated with a demon or a mimic demon, like he said. Here's an example of someone who heard a mimic, and it was shared by a Redditor who goes by Hexa. And she wrote, one of the most common kinds of activity in our house is hearing a mimic of one of our voices. Most often it's just calling one of our names, but we've had more intense experiences as well. Sometimes it sounds like normal beckoning, but sometimes it sounds angry or troubled. I once heard my dad angrily shout out to me, whatever her name is, she didn't put her name, dinner's ready, she heard her dad say. Then she says, I got upset because I couldn't understand what I did to make him so mad. When I made my way to the kitchen, he and my mom were still busy cooking. I asked why he yelled at me, and I snapped back that I wasn't even hungry. They looked at me confused and assured me that didn't happen. And they didn't hear it either. My mom, I once heard, my mom and I once heard my dad call her name too, then urgently yell for help. We immediately thought that he had fallen in the shower, and my mom started to panic. She ran to the bathroom and barged in. She scared the crap out of him. He swore he was fine and hadn't uttered a word. She came out of the bathroom stunned. It took her a while for her adrenaline to calm down. A particularly weird instance also occurred when my sister and I were sitting together on the couch. We were just talking and laughing when we suddenly heard what sounded exactly like her laughing in the kitchen. We also heard quiet talking. It was so quiet we couldn't hear what was said. And then we heard her laughing again before it stopped. And there wasn't anyone but us at home. Now that would freak me out.
I don't like that.
Shay DeMar on Reddit told this story. So my boyfriend and I have lived in this house for 2 years, and a little while after I started hearing my boyfriend in the house way after he should have left for work. Examples, she said, I heard the fridge opening and closing. I heard him walking around in his boots, sometimes even talking quietly. So one day I got up and checked, and my boyfriend wasn't there. So I went back to bed only to hear more. This isn't my first rodeo, as I have always been around the paranormal, but it caught me off guard. I have never gotten a bad vibe or feeling when this happens because it's never been violent other than knocking a candle off the table one time. A couple of months ago, I was cooking fish for dinner and it smelled just awful. We had just bought it, and my boyfriend told me that's how they usually smell. He went to lay down because he got a bad headache, and 30 minutes later, I hear him shuffling out of the bedroom, and he asked what the hell that smell was. I turned around to tell him it was the fish, but there wasn't anyone there. The voice came from right behind me. I told my boyfriend about it later, and he said I was crazy. And then a little empty box was pushed off the counter right in front of me at that same time. He hasn't questioned me about it since, but I just heard it whistle for my dog the same way my boyfriend whistles from the bedroom. Sorry if this is long. I just wanted to tell someone about it. I don't feel scared or in danger, but could this be a mimic? Look here, I would
You
be
don't
so
feel scared?
Yeah.
I wonder, did her dog go down there or not? Because, dogs can sense stuff like that. I bet that dog was like, oh, hell no.
Yeah, she didn't
Ain't going down
say.
there. That's
Okay.
creepy. I don't know how people are just like so
Oh, I've been
nonchalant
scared.
about it.
Yeah.
I'm not really scared. Do you guys think this is a mimic? Yeah, I kind of do. And I'm
Yeah.
kind of scared for you, girly.
Okay, so I got one more story, and then I'm going to tell you a firsthand story from someone I know. So this Reddit username is Leo Knows, KNOWZ. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Oh my God.
He says, I'm living in a new place, and it's happened twice to me now. I don't know if this is Leo Knows. I don't know if Leo is a man or a woman. Let's read it and see. I'm living in a new place, and it's happened twice to me now. Once to my grown daughter, and possibly with our dog. Here's a dog again. It's the phenomenon where you're alone, but you hear someone's voice or laugh very clearly as if they're in the room with you. In my case, I heard the voice of my short-term roommate. I knew she wasn't at home, and it was very clear. The voice was very clear. It was in the voice she always used when playing with the dog. My daughter heard me laughing as if I was in the bathroom with her while she was in the shower, but I wasn't even at home. She and I and the dog also heard a growl, which didn't sound threatening, kind of the half growl funny noises she makes when getting comfortable. She reacted to it, the dog did, and growled a little back. We all clearly heard it. The setting is an apartment in a church. It's a little creepy, but not too bad. Some weird noises otherwise, but this mimicking thing is a little too close. Does anyone else have experiences with or ideas about it? So I was thinking about a conversation that Lindsay and I had. We were talking about like residual hauntings, and could it be just like repetitive sound waves?
Leftover energy.
Yeah, leftover energies. So there's so many theories about mimics being demons or poltergeists or just residual hauntings. But I was doing a little bit of reading about residual hauntings and intelligent hauntings, and there is a difference, of course. And a residual haunting is like when you see someone sees an apparition doing the same thing over and over again. It's just like a loop of energy, like maybe trapped in this, whatever they were doing when they died. But an intelligent haunting, they say, is when the entity can react with the present. And so that's why they say that a mimic is an intelligent haunting, whatever it is, whatever type of entity it is. I'm not sure. I've never heard one. Someone close to me did. And this happened years ago, and she has told this story many times. She states to this day that it's one of the strangest, weirdest things that's ever happened to her. And this is her story. At the time, she lived about 2 miles from her parents. One day she was inside but had the windows open. She suddenly heard her father loudly call her by her name, first and middle name, and it sounded like he was right outside. She said she heard it clear as day, and recognizing his voice, she went outside expecting him to be there. But he was nowhere to be seen. She looked all around the yard. He wasn't there. His car wasn't there. So she went back inside, picked up the phone, and dialed his number. He was at home and had been at home all morning. And she's been puzzled by that event ever since and cannot explain it to this day. And it didn't scare her at the moment that she heard the voice,
Yeah.
but I think later when she realized, he wasn't anywhere near.
Yeah.
And even if he'd been outside at his house yelling her name, she wouldn't have heard it 2 miles away. So that's very strange. I've never had an experience
Weird.
like that. I don't know if either one of you have ever had an experience like that where you've heard a voice like of someone but they're not there.
I've heard it was weird, and it happened to me several times when I was. But the most memorable ones were when I was in the military. I was 17, 18 at the time, maybe somewhere in that range. And we was it always happened in the field. We'd be out in the middle of BFE somewhere, and it happened pretty much like in the middle of the night. We'd be kind of like at our hide spot. It'd be downtime, and I'm in my vehicle, it's not comfortable, and I'm kind of just closing my eyes, just trying to get some sleep. And I would hear my dad's voice, plain as day, yelling my name, like,
Wow.
Ron.
Oh,
And I would hear that frequently, like all the time. So I would wake up, and then I would start like looking around, wanting to get my wits about me, and then I would start worrying, okay, is something wrong back home?
yeah.
But I'd be in the field, and there was no way I could contact anybody. So the minute I would get back from the field exercises, I would try to call, and see
Check
what's
in.
up.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Did you tell him that you heard his voice? Like,
Yeah.
calling?
I would hear, and he's like, "That's weird."
Yeah.
I wasn't over here randomly yelling your name.
Yeah, just randomly. And
Yeah, that's so weird.
I remember once that I heard that, and when I got back, I played softball, and he was on a team back home in Virginia. And I went that day and bought a certain type of softball glove, certain brand, certain thing. And I called him. I'm like, "Hey, Dad, guess what?" And he's like, "What?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "But got me a new glove, da 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 da." And I told him what it was. He goes, "When did you get it?" And I said, "Today." He goes, "I bought the exact same glove today at the same time."
Wow.
And like I said, the night before, I had heard him holler my name. And, so it was weird. I know that doesn't have anything to do with the mimic, but it's just kind of weird that all that happened within 24 hours.
Yeah, that is a strange
Weird.
coincidence. I know that some people, I guess, feel that you can establish a connection like with a loved one that is so close that you can imagine you're hearing that voice and it seems real to you. But I don't think that that's what these instances are. I mean, it's an audible voice, and it seems to happen at times when you're least expecting it.
Yeah.
So, and all the stories are, and I read many more stories. If our listeners want to go down a rabbit trail with this, there's a lot of stories out there about mimics and people's experiences hearing them. But those are some wild experiences that you had, Ryan. Lindsay, have you ever had anything happen like that?
I was trying to think back, and honestly, I don't think I ever have had anything like that happen to me. But a lot of times when I'm like on my own by myself, I'm either watching TV or listening to a podcast or listening to music. So it's not like there's just silence and I can hear somebody say anything. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm partying or like the volume's super loud, but I think if something like that happened, it would have to be pretty prominent for me to even notice.
Yeah, true.
I don't know. That's odd.
I
I don't understand it. And I don't think I've ever heard anything like that.
Would it freak you out if you did?
I think I would. And that's another thing. Like, I feel like if I was sitting in the living room and I heard a voice, I don't think that I would be able to distinguish it as my own. Because when I play back, like when I do Sunday Scaries, that is not what I hear in my head. That's not what I sound like to me. You know what I mean? So I don't know how if other people are different and just their voice sounds the same to them all the time. I wouldn't be able to tell it was my voice. Right. And then the mimic would probably be like, "Man, I'm trying to freak this girl out. She doesn't even know I'm using her own voice."
What if it sounded like my voice or Dad's voice?
I think
or Brian's voice. I mean, that would freak you out, wouldn't it?
Probably go looking for it. I would probably make Champ help me look around the house for it. There's not a lot of places that it could hide here because my house is really tiny, but I'd probably want to check it out and see if I could
Yeah.
find a culprit if there was one. And if I never found anything, I'd probably be like, that was weird, and just move
Yeah.
on with my day.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot more, there's a lot scarier things that could happen than hearing, you
Yeah.
know, voice. But like the one guy said, that's how it starts. And then, you know, if you're afraid, it gets stronger and can eventually, potentially, you know, appear.
And that makes me wonder, like, if it does get that strong and if it appears, if it's mimicking your voice, is it going to look like you? Is it going to turn into a doppelganger?
Oh,
Or is it
gosh.
going to present itself as somebody else when it
Yeah.
appears, or something else?
Something else. Because it said, in one of the things said it was a shapeshifter, and it could mimic human or other beings, I guess.
I don't know if it's, and like I said, it's confusing because most of the time you don't think as a mimic, you think more of a shapeshifter or doppelganger. I've
Mhm.
seen things before, like walk by me or in a mirror, and you think it's somebody else, and then that person's either not there or like in a completely different area or not home at
Mhm.
all.
Mhm.
And you go in there and you're like, hey, was you just in the bedroom? They're like, what are you talking about? I've been in here for 2 hours, and you're like,
Yeah.
so you just didn't walk by me? And they're like, no. I'm like, okay.
Well,
Or
then who did I see? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
for real. I've had that happen several times, and there were several people that I know that I'd be in a different room,
Mhm.
and they would hear, they would hear things, whether it be my voice or like they something, they'd be in, and they would just hear something randomly say, "Where is he?" And they come say, "Hey, something's looking for you." I'm like,
Uh-huh.
"What are you talking about?" Yeah, I was in here, and something just come by and just said, "Where is he?" So I thought they was talking about you, but there was nothing there. So I go up and I go through the house, and I'm like, okay, I'm here. Well, who's looking for me?
Yeah.
That's happened once or twice. And, I've never found anything or anything's never happened, but there's some strange
Mhm.
things like that's happened. So
Right.
it kind of falls in line with the mimic, trying to trick people, turning into animate objects,
Mhm.
and being able to get people to come close to them. So who knows what it is? I mean, it sounds to me kind of like a mimic because you hear
Mhm.
voices or you see
Right.
things just at a glance, and then you turn around, and it could be something, out of the ordinary or whatever.
Yeah.
So weird.
Or you see something out of the corner of your eye and you turn around and there's nothing.
Yeah, because like I said, some of the things I've read, and they're kind of blob form or liquidy jelly kind of, and they
Mm-hmm.
can turn into things. I've also read some things that that humans are not a common shape. They normally try in inanimate objects like treasure
Mm-hmm.
chests or dressers or whatever, or they make noises to try to get you to come look at it so it does
Mm-hmm.
not look threatening. So that when you do get close enough, they can kind of do their blob thing, kind of engulf you, and then ultimately do the damage to you. So
That sounds like
What?
yeah,
what is that? Your dad and them told
yeah,
us.
the gobbledygook.
Yeah.
That
The
sounds like
gobbledygook.
that. Yeah, for real. Now that
Yeah.
It makes a return. Oh my God. We got to do an episode about this thing.
and I know,
Lindsay thinks that's the funniest name for anything.
I just think it's so odd to me because if you're going to make up something scary, why give it the silliest name? I mean, that is the
when you're
craziest name I've
4,
heard.
everything sounds scary. When you're like, it's the
Of course.
gobbledygook. It's
It's a
going to come
gobbledygook.
get you. And at 4, you're like, oh my God, it's the gobbledygook.
Oh my God, it is.
Yeah, we'll have to do
Oh
an
my
episode
God.
one day.
That's so funny.
We'll have to get some of the older generation that still
Yeah.
remembers the stories.
Yeah.
See if we can get a few of them on here.
That's funny.
Oh, they twisted us. They really did.
Maybe they was talking about a mimic or a shapeshifter.
Yeah, who knows?
That's just what they called it.
Maybe.
Now,
Yeah.
Ryan, you said you had some stories too about mimics, right?
Like I said, a lot of the research I done was kind of like the back history, what they were. It's real
Mhm.
popular with Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah,
Right.
tell about that because I kept seeing that too as I was researching. So, in other words, that video game Dungeons and Dragons has mimics in it.
Yeah. like I said, according, this is basically the lore, and it's also true in the Dungeons and Dragons game. Uh, they do have certain vulnerabilities, like you said. They're susceptible to fire, extreme cold. That limits their shape shifting abilities and make them easier to combat. Also, uh, they can turn into almost any inanimate object that's furniture, doors, dungeon
So, like
features,
on the game
doors.
to like
Yeah, they
fool
can
you.
change into pretty much anything to kind of, because what's the first thing people say? Like, if you just hear a random voice and it sounds familiar to you, whether it be brother, sister, mom, dad, even your own, you're going to go check it out, right? So you're not going to be threatened if you just walk into a room and you just see some dressers or something. Now, you may notice if there's a chest there that's out of place, or maybe a lamp, right? And if it does,
It's
you're like,
something
hey, I
small,
don't
like a
remember that
book
lamp.
or something.
Yeah, and then you
You
walk
would never
over and you're like, I don't
notice.
remember that there. And that's how it tricks you to come get it, and it attacks you.
So in the game, it attacks you. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that's how it's really supposed to do in real life also, because
Oh,
if it doesn't shape into a person, then it shifts into something that's inanimate, like a dresser, like a lamp, like a book, a door, because it gets you to follow the sound. And when you get close enough to it, then that's when it attacks.
Yeah, it would get me. It would get me for sure.
yeah, me too. I'd be
Because
nosy.
I'd be so nosy. I'd want to know what it was. I'd go look for it, and I wouldn't even. I'd just be absorbed by the goop, I guess. whatever it shows itself as. I'm imagining like Flubber. Do you remember that movie?
Yes, I do remember that movie.
With like, wasn't Robin Williams in it?
Yeah, I think he was.
That's what I'm imagining it to materialize as, just Flubber.
It's kind of like that. Yeah, absolutely. And then, like I said, in the video game, now I don't know if this is real or not because they based it off of things, of course. There are 4 monsters in Mimic. The first being Kuriko. The second is Amucade. The third is Flesh Bags. And the fourth being Sagamo. So those are the 4 Mimic leaders, and they're all siblings. And they coincide with the number 4. And 4 is associated with death. As in both kanjis are pronounced the same. So they basically are associated with death, and they're supposed to be associated with the number 4, which is supposed to bring that on. And that's, at least that's what it says in the game and what they're based off of. And there's 2 varieties. There's a smaller one, which is more intelligent, and a larger, less intelligent, which is a killer mimic. And the most common mimic are neutral and in alignment. So basically, they're pretty neutral in what they do as far as the small ones. And the killer mimics are neutral evil. So they're just pretty much, they're larger, and those ones will kill you. The smaller ones are just like intelligent, the smart ones. And the older they get, the bigger they get, the more less intelligent. They're just basically out to get you.
Now, I have never played Dungeons and Dragons.
I neither.
But I wonder, I mean, everything's based on something, right? So somebody that helped create this game heard about mimics somewhere. That's interesting.
And another thing is they reproduce. Yes, they actually reproduce through cellular division, which is like asexual mitosis, which is a true form of mimic, is amphibious, which is like slime, like I told you.
Yes.
And when they get big enough or they've consumed enough, which means they have to eat things, they just split into 2.
Yeah, just separate.
So the more they eat, the more they kill, and that's how they grow. They call to you, you get close to it, they kill you, basically they absorb you. And then once they get enough people, they split into 2, and then they start the process all over again.
Yeah. So I guess that could be a good lesson for real life too. If you hear a mimic, just stay away.
Mind your own business.
Go the other way. But that's true. Your natural reaction is to go check it out. Because you're not at first, right? You're not thinking that anything's out of the ordinary. Like, the woman in my story that had told that experience she had, she thought, well, dad's come down, and he's outside and he needs me for something. And then to get out there, look all around, and he's nowhere to be found, and to call on the phone and he's there
Yeah.
at his
Wow.
house. Yeah, I think that would creep me out a little bit. And I don't like the idea. I don't like to think about like them getting strong enough to be able to
Mm-mm.
appear.
Mm-mm.
Uh, but now, Ron, that kind of segues into what Lindsay's going to talk about tonight, which is something that I was not familiar with. And I don't know if you have ever heard of a tulpa either, but I had not until Lindsay mentioned, hey, let's do an episode about this. I was like, about what? So we're learning as we go, too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Ron, did you have anything else about mimics before we turn it over to Lindsay and let her talk about tulpas?
I actually know, like I said, a couple of the stories they corresponded with each other. A lot of them are just basic along the same lines as what you had. I just wanted to let people know, that if you do hear a voice and it sounds familiar to you, or if it sounds strange, be real careful. If you go to it, that's what it wants. Don't get too close. If you find something out of place, I don't know if the first thing I knew, who put that book out of place? When you get over and the first thing you do, you start
Move
fussing
it.
at your loved one, and then you go to grab the book, and the next thing you know, you're Slimer. So,
You're slime.
yeah, because it's just going to turn into a big mouth and eat you. The next thing you know, there's two of them there waiting on you. So,
Oh,
Yeah.
oh
Yeah.
man. But thank
Okay.
you for sharing those experiences you
Yeah.
had when you were in the military. I didn't know about. I hadn't heard those.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
That is wild.
yeah, like I said, there's been several. I mean, whether it be mimics or not, but yeah, that's the most familiar because anybody that's met my dad knows that he has a voice that if you heard it once, it's not something
It's
that's going to
unique.
be easily
Yeah.
forgotten.
Yeah.
He's a big guy, 6'4", 220, got a real deep, commanding voice. Even when he's talking nice to you, it sounds like he's
Yeah.
trying to be controlling.
Yeah.
So it's not a voice that just anybody can make, And when you're all the way across the country, Fort Sill or Fort Riley, and he's all the way in Virginia, halfway across the country, it's not something that's,
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was. That's strange. All right,
Okay.
Lindsay, what you got for us? Educate us.
So, tulpas. Now, I had heard of this concept a long time ago because I think it was on Real Life Ghost Stories. I'm pretty sure, but it was on one of the earlier episodes.
Mhm.
And ever since hearing that, I just thought it was one of the weirdest phenomena that I had heard of. It's just so strange, but it's not widely heard of. I think that was the only episode of any podcast that I ever heard talk about it. So it is a materialized being or thought form created through spiritual practice or intense concentration. So basically, a tulpa is like a sentient imaginary friend. Like, when you're a kid, I never had one, but you always hear kids talking about their imaginary friend.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that you create in your own mind by like intense concentration, thinking about all the characteristics, what makes it what it is, what its voice sounds like, what it looks like, how it would act, over and over and over and over and over again until it becomes real.
Like it manifests.
I guess all of that energy comes together and manifests, and it becomes a real form.
Like a real, like when you say real form, do you mean like a spiritual entity? What do you?
That's more how I imagined it. Like you're not, in a way you're giving birth, but you're not physically giving birth to something. Mm-hmm. It's not like a organic human. Right. I think it's more on like a higher plane existence where it just comes into being. To me, it's very imaginary. And I know it's hard to like hear that and just toss it aside like, oh, they're just crazy, they're just imagining stuff. But to some of these people, they're real. Like, they're real beings, which we'll get into that in a minute.
Okay, because I have a question, but I'll hold on to it.
Now, you can ask it if you want.
Well, I was just thinking, there's split personalities, dissociative
That's what I
disorder,
was thinking.
where
It
your
reminds me of that.
brain takes on different,
Different personality.
personalities,
Yeah, a whole other
characteristics.
person.
Uh-huh.
That's what it reminded me of too, but it's not. It's different.
Okay.
Possibly. I'm not a medical professional, so I don't know. Anyways, so the people that are manifesting these tulpas are known as tulpamancers, which I just thought was such a cool name. A
Tulpamancers.
tulpamancer, yeah.
Okay.
Now, I will say modern practitioners consider tulpas to be more of a psychological concept rather than paranormal.
Okay.
So they're not imagining a ghost into being. Like, it's not a spirit, it's not a ghost. It's like an actual entity that they've imagined and made from their brain.
Uh-huh.
Which is interesting to me because, and I think we talked about this yesterday, I think. And I might have mentioned this on the podcast before, but I had watched this little short video about these scientists were doing tests on these, I think they were Tibetan monks, ones that do meditation all of the time.
Yes.
And that are on that higher level of consciousness. They've reached nirvana. They've just gotten to the highest level of where they can be. And they were doing brain scans of their brains, and they had extra folds of their brains.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, the more folds you have, the more intelligent you are,
Right.
is the thing. And that just blew my mind.
Yeah.
So you're using your brain to go to this different place, to go to this higher plane, you're meditating, but your brain itself is the one that's doing that, and it's getting smarter. It's creating these new ridges. I think that's just amazing. I just thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever heard of. But it made me wonder if tulpamancers would have the same thing.
Are doing the same thing in a
Because
different way.
it's not just an overnight thing. Like, this is months and months and months of constant, like, intense meditation. I mean, not 24/7, but it's definitely something that you have to devote time to actually make happen. So I just thought it was really interesting. So tulpa has Buddhist origins, and it comes from the Buddhist word sprulla, which sounds really similar. And those were earthly bodies that Buddha had manifested to teach others nirvana. So it was this concept of, I don't know if while he was still alive or after he passed, that Buddha was manifesting other entities to help surrounding people reach nirvana and teach them meditation and different practices with their breathing and getting into the right headspace. I don't know what to say. I just think that's such an interesting concept.
So it's almost like he was manifesting
Help.
psychological clones of himself to teach others.
But not exact clones.
Okay.
And we'll go into that, but they're not exact clones. They're completely different entities than you.
Okay.
They start out similar to you because they're coming from your brain, but eventually they get self-aware and they change themselves. Okay.
That is like mind blowing.
We're gonna keep going. I know it's kind of out there, but stay with me.
Okay.
So they are an independent, intelligent being capable of complex and coherent communication. At first, they can seem simple and disjointed, but like I said, the more they're developed, the more sentient they become. So if you're going through this process, you come up with this idea of another person or another being, and it starts to manifest. If you stick with it and you communicate to it and talk to it like you would talk to anybody, like a baby or a toddler, somebody you want to teach something, you want to teach them how to communicate, they're going to learn that and pick that up from you, and they're going to take that and they're independent thought, so they're going to come up with their own ideas and their own feelings.
So how does it manifest? Like,
I'm going to go into the
Okay.
steps in a minute.
okay.
So now there have been reports of tulpas that are capable of temporarily accessing and controlling their host with consent.
Okay. This is sounding more and more like
I know.
So you manifest
Y'all
something
silence is like,
from
what
your
the
mind, and then it in return tries to control you because of the connection. Is that what you're saying?
Well, what I got from it was because they're not physically organic. They're ideas, they're beings that manifest, I guess, in energy and in spirit, that with your consent, they could inhabit your body and thus have that experience of being a real organic person.
like inhabit your body for as long as you say, okay.
Yeah, I think there would be, because it requires consent, which love that. Most important idea in the world. Everybody needs it. It's so important. There would be a time frame set up, is what I'm thinking.
Oh, okay.
Like, okay, I'll let you in, but let's do this for like maybe 5 minutes at first and then build from there.
Mm-hmm.
But what was odd to me, and I don't want to come across as judgy or really skeptical, because I'm not. Like, y'all know I'm super open-minded.
Right.
But it was hard for me to wrap my head around, because when I tried to find like spooky tulpa stories on Reddit or online, a lot of them were from the tulpas.
So the tulpa was telling the story
had taken over the host and was typing through them, I guess. And it's hard for me to believe that, I guess.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
I do, because
I guess I'm just too logical and skeptical to think, oh my gosh, like, this is real. Somebody's taken over this, like an entity has taken over this person, and they're really on here telling us all about. To me, it just feels more like another personality coming through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to say that, because I'm not a medical professional, so I
I'm
can't.
not. Yeah, I'm not either. But whether
weird.
they call it a tulpa or a mental disorder or something like that, I mean, that'd be hard to differentiate. Sounds like a really thin line between.
Yeah, because then you get into, and I'll talk about like the different steps that you can manifest a tulpa. But at the end, you're kind of getting into full on seeing this being, hallucinating everything about them is real. So at that point, do you say, oh my gosh, like, I've done it, I've made this tulpa, like, I've tried really hard, I've done this whole process, I'm so proud of myself? Or at that point, do you say, okay, I'm having hallucinations, maybe I need to take a step back?
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying?
Or, oh,
I just
crap.
don't know.
Like, what if the tulpa?
What have I done? What have I made?
Yes, because what if the tulpa kind of turns against you? I don't know. Somebody should make a movie about this.
Yeah, and I didn't really see a lot of instances like that, because for the most part, the people that are manifesting these have ideas in their heads of what they want to be, because maybe it's people on the spectrum that have a hard time in social settings, have a hard time making friends, and they're lonely. Yeah. So this is a way for them to not have an imaginary friend, but have something that they truly think is there and there for them, and it's easier for them than going out and into a big social setting and trying to.
And I get that. Yeah,
it can be tricky. So I mean, I do understand that, and I think that could be a great resource for them. But at the same time, just in my brain, I'm kind of wondering, I'm going back to our Slender Man episode. You see where I'm going with this? Like, those girls had thought about Slender Man and been so entranced in the lore that for them it became real. They were seeing hallucinations of him, hearing his voice.
Yeah.
At that moment, do you take a step back and say, okay, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Should I go talk to somebody about this? Because hallucinations 9 times out of 10 are not a good sign.
Right. Yeah.
But I don't want to sound too skeptical, because if it is a real thing, bravo, higher consciousness, that's fantastic that you got there. I don't think I could ever, because meditating is not my strong point. My brain is going 100 miles an hour all the time. I could never quiet it down enough to like concentrate on my breathing and get to a higher plane, because as soon as I close my eyes, I'm immediately thinking about, okay, I need to go to the store. I need to get this. I need to do this. Like, I still have to do all these things. You know what I mean? My brain just isn't quiet like that. I don't think that I could ever make a tulpa.
Well, and I think that's learned. That's a practice,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
It kind of reminds me of the movie. Have y'all seen the movie Split? Where the guy
Yes.
like a multiple personalities. You know the last one that you don't see until the end, the Beast. How they keep describing it throughout the movie, and everybody's like, it's not real. It's just something in your imagination. It's not. And then at the very end, he actually visualizes and becomes the Beast.
Yeah.
It's kind of what I get when you say that, because it's like he's visualizing it. Nobody can think it's real. And then all of a sudden he gets to that level or on that plane like you're talking about. And then all of a sudden he believes it so much and he's so in touch with it, it becomes him. And then all of a sudden you're like,
just so real.
He just hulked out, so.
Yeah.
And it's like a completely different being than who they were before. Completely different. Anyways, so there's not an exact science. There's no one method that exists really to creating a tulpa. Everybody can kind of do this in their own specific different way. But basically, you're envisioning their personality, appearance, voice, any defining characteristics by thinking about it, like intense concentration meditation, drawing it out, writing about it constantly. Like I said, not 24/7, but you have to really devote time to it to have it happen. So you're really putting all of your energy and your thoughts into, what is this being? What is this person going to be like? So now the first milestone is when you feel they're communicating back to you. So the way that, and I'll link the website below, but the way that it kind of explained it is that, when you're thinking your own specific thoughts, that it's coming from your brain because you thought it. It feels like it originates in your brain. That's what happened. But the first milestone is when you feel they're communicating with you, and it will definitely feel very specifically different than your thoughts. Like, you'll think it in your brain, but it's not coming from you. It's coming from this other being. And it's not going to be like anything fully comprehensible and intelligent right off the bat. It might be what they're feeling, or it might be a small thought, because they're not super intelligent right off the bat. But to me, that's hard to understand, because I've never experienced that. I'm not knocking it. I'm not saying it's not real, but it's hard for me to think that I could have another thought in my brain that's not coming from my brain.
From your brain, yeah.
Yeah. You see what I'm saying? It's just hard for me to grasp, I guess. But like I said, they start weak, but they develop depending on how much you practice and communicate with them. Now, the second milestone is a deviation from your ideas. So basically, once you have practiced with them, communicated, built them up enough, they're going to start creating their own personality. Your original design is still there. It's kind of a basis for them to build themselves up off of. So they'll probably still look the same, they'll probably still sound the same, but they're going to start having a consciousness and developing their own ideas, basically. So let's go through the steps, shall we? You guys are so quiet. You're like, what the hell are we doing?
I'm just letting everybody know, don't do this at home. If you do, we're not liable. If you start like
Yeah,
thinking out
exactly.
18 personalities and say, it wasn't me. So
Because,
Yeah,
I was just going to say, this sounds a whole lot like like someone who's practicing this is opening the door for entities that may already be out there to just slide
that
right
want
on
to,
in.
yeah,
Yeah.
that want to come in, and you
Yes.
think that you're manifesting it, but it could be something that's actually dangerous that you're
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
I guess in that case, I would say, if you're somebody that wants to try this out, I'll tell you two things. You need to make sure that your intentions are very, very, very clear, and you are set in your meditation and what you want this to be. So much so to the point that nothing else could infiltrate that, I guess.
Yeah.
And then the second thing I'll say is, I didn't really find anywhere how to get rid of them.
Oh.
I mean, I didn't look super hard into that, but like I would imagine that it would be a process. Like, if you created something that you didn't want around anymore, you have this other sentient being that you're gonna have to figure out something to do with.
Like how to separate yourself from
And
that.
they might not like that.
Yeah. You know what this
Anyways.
reminds me of? Have y'all seen that movie Megan about the doll the doll?
Yeah. Yeah. Because we saw that in theaters together. You
That's
kidding
right.
me? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So here are some of the steps that I have found. This is my Tulpa. His name is Champ.
Hey, Champ.
I don't know what he's doing. He just wanted to come say hi. He came over here to tell me that I'm sounding crazy. Okay, so all right. So number one, after you have dedicated all this time and energy into manifesting and concentrating, drawing, writing, thinking about this thing, you're gonna start to sense a presence. You can't see anything yet, but you can sense that something is there with you. Like, you know how you can feel people standing next to you? You can feel that energy. So you're going to start to feel a presence. The second step, you're going to start to have those conceptual thoughts and feelings that are not your own. They're coming from another source, like we talked about earlier. And then you're going to have a mutually generated response. So shared thoughts and feelings. And then you're going to have separately generated internal response. So you're going to start feeling what they're feeling, is what I'm getting out of it. The fifth step is separately generated. Now, this is auditory. We're not getting to the visual part yet. A separately generated audible internal response. So you're going to start hearing their voice in your head, which I'm conflicted on. You see what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
If that's something that you're doing, great, fantastic. But also, if you start to hear voices in your head, most of the time, that's not a good sign. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And is it a higher consciousness, or are you just getting to a place mentally where you want this to be a thing so bad you're starting to hallucinate that it's real?
Or you're starting to disassociate with
with
yourself.
reality.
Yeah. From your reality.
I'm conflicted. I think if I can meet someone that has gone through this process and could really walk me through it and was really convincing, I would buy into it more. I probably would. Because I am open-minded, but this is hard for me to get behind.
This is, yeah.
Because it makes me worry. Like, it makes me worry about people that are doing this. Like, are you okay? I'll be your friend. Like, you don't have to. You don't have to
I'll be your friend. It's okay.
Let's have real friends.
So, the last step for auditory is you're going to have a separately generated audible external response so you can hear the voice outside of your head like a mimic. So now you're hearing their voice. It's not just in your brain, you're hearing it out loud. I don't like this.
I don't like this.
It's okay. They're not just going to come up on you. You really have to try very, very hard to make this happen. So if you're not wanting it to happen,
we don't need it to.
Okay. Now visually, okay. It kind of creeps me out a little bit. So visually, the first step is obviously imagining them. You're imagining that you want this being to manifest and be real to you. And then you want to give them defining traits. So like I said, personality, what's their voice going to sound like? What are they going to look like? How are they going to dress? What outfit are they wearing? Where do you see them living? Apartment, house, building. Are they from a long time ago? Are they modern? What are we dealing with?
Mm-hmm.
Then once you have imagined them and you have all of their traits down, then you get to the fully defined imagery in your brain. So you have exactly what they look like in your brain. You're on track. You're ready to go. All right. Well, then you have a partially defined breakthrough, which are actual scenarios that you're seeing in your mind of this of this tulpa, but they're not really clear. They're kind of blurry. It's almost like a dream state.
Okay.
Are you following?
Mm-hmm.
Listeners, are you with me? All right. And then you have a fully defined breakthrough, which consists of an entirely realistic hallucination.
So you think you're seeing them, like
I guess.
That's what it sounds like to me.
But then in my thoughts, I'm like, but how do you know the difference between hallucinating this tulpa and a bad hallucination that is not mentally healthy for you? I guess it's all set with intentions. That's what I'm thinking. All right. So then after you have those entirely realistic hallucinations, you're seeing everything super clearly, you're on track, you're going to start to have external visuals. So you will detect an external presence in your physical environment.
Can other people?
That's the thing. I don't know. Like, I don't know if other people can sense your tulpa. Is it like an imaginary friend? Is it like you're manifesting and other people can see it? I don't know.
Huh.
But the next step is you're going to start seeing some movement in your peripheral vision.
Mm-mm.
I was like, oh, hell no. So you're going to start seeing them, but not full on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not going to be for a very long time, just really quick in your peripheral vision, and then they're gone. But if you stick with it, you're going to stick with it, okay? They're going to start manifesting, so they're going to be visible to you, but they're going to be like blurry, like hazy. Nothing's fully clear. And then obviously the very last step is they're going to be vividly realistic. Like they're manifesting there. You can hear them. You can see them. It's like you
can take them to the grocery store with you.
Mm-hmm.
Walk
like, yeah, it's like they're there.
Then you're going to get committed. So you better just do this at home.
Well, and like I said, most of the stories that I saw on Reddit, to me, and it's Reddit, I mean, it can be true, it can be not true, whatever. Mm-hmm. But most of the stories that I came across on Reddit, to me, weren't the most believable because it was like the tulpa themselves was talking, and how do you know if that's true? And it just was very out there. Mm-hmm. And also, and I'm not saying anything bad against this, but a lot of the tulpas were manifestations of like an anime character. Mm-hmm. Or I think a lot of it started actually with people wanting to manifest My Little Pony characters. there was that group of people, sometimes adults, that were really hard into that for a period of time. Do y'all remember that?
I don't remember that.
I think it was like in the early 2010s, maybe, that I had first started hearing about it. And they got a lot of flack for that because people don't understand that. And I don't really understand it. But if you like something, you like something. If it's not hurting anybody else, what is the harm? If this tulpa is not hurting anybody else, what is the harm? But at the same time, is it impacting you mentally?
Yeah, is it hurting you?
I think if you're out there and you're listening and you want to try something like this, I would just be very, very careful.
Cautious, yeah.
And I would just make sure that before you even get started with anything like this, that you would just be very intentional and very careful with your mental health and keep track of how it's impacting you.
Because you can't
try to keep it healthy.
Yeah, because you can open the door to so many things, whether they be psychological, mental, spiritual. I just think that's some shaky ground to be on, but that's just me.
It's different.
It is different.
And I came across a few different mentions of people having more than one tulpa, having several different tulpas that they have manifested.
Wow.
So then in my mind, you're really getting into that DID. You're really getting into that multiple personalities. And is this a real thing, or is this maybe a mental thing that we should be checking into? I don't know.
It's weird for sure. It's unique.
It's like
very different.
It kind of reminds me of the movie Multiplicity. If y'all seen it, he has like 5 different versions of his, several versions of himself. Each one has its own individual personality. So he just sends him to do all his work.
Yeah.
So he does one thing so he can spend more time at home, and then they go and do everything. One of them's really naive, and one's real sweet, and one's like hardcore, and one's kind of a jerk.
That would be useful.
And that's kind of what I'm thinking. I'm like, hey, I get 3 times as much done, or I can get 3 jobs one time and make 4 times the money, But I don't think that's how it works. It's like mental, and even though most of us do hear voices in our head, don't let them like get too much control over you,
Yeah. And then you're gonna have to think, and I didn't find anything like this, but if you create a tulpa that is yourself, are you then getting into dangerous doppelganger territory where that becomes very dangerous and unlucky, and somebody in that situation is going to die?
Yeah, I don't want anything to do with those doppelgangers, so I'm staying out of that.
Absolutely not. I know. I just thought that I think it's such an interesting concept. I don't think there's been too many studies on it. I think there was possibly maybe one that I'll have to look into and find that website to link in our show notes. But I don't think there's been anything concrete. I think there is a paper out there, but I don't think that it's been academically published. So I don't know how credible it is.
Right. Well,
but that's what I have.
Mimics and tulpas are unique, and it does make me more curious, like so many other times that we've talked about different topics. It makes me want to learn more, or explore more, or question more even. So
I would love to talk, I would love to really sit down and have a conversation with somebody that has created a tulpa and just hear all about it.
Yeah.
I just think it's so,
who knows?
It's so unique, and it's so interesting because you're not manifesting a ghost. It's not paranormal.
Right.
It's psychological. And to me, that is very intriguing.
It is. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff. Well,
what a ride. What a ride this
What a ride. Here we are again at the end of the episode with more questions and more curiosity than we had when we started out. Oh, but you know what? we would love to hear from any of our
Mm-hmm.
listeners and viewers who have had experience with hearing or seeing a mimic, or if you've heard about tulpas and you have more knowledge than we do about that topic. Please shoot us an email, sirensofthesupernatural@gmail.com. It's right there.
I want to know. I want to know everything
Yeah.
about it. If you have made a tulpa, come tell me, because I need to know.
Yeah. And if you've heard, if you've heard a mimic, if you think you have had experience there, I mean, share your stories with us. We would love to hear them and even share them with others on the podcast.
Yeah.
Also, follow us on socials. We got some exciting things coming up this summer and fall, and including some on-site investigations and special guests. Got lots of special guests lined up too. So we love to have other like-minded people on the show and learn from them and hear about what they do and how they're moving around in the paranormal world. So if do you guys have anything else that you want to add or say before we leave our listeners this week?
I don't think there's anything else I have to say. I don't think there's anything else I can say.
About tulpas, but what about Sunday Scaries?
Okay, Sunday Scaries. Don't hate me, okay? Don't hate me. I know that this last episode was supposed to be the end, but chapter 15 was so long, and I want Sunday Scaries to be like a short, maybe 30-minute fun story that's scary. I don't want it to be this really long episode. It's going to take a long time to listen to. So I have it already recorded. I just have to finish editing it. The last episode for this story, the last chapter
Sunday
will be Sunday. We're wrapping it up. It's going to happen.
Okay. But you're still going to do Sunday Scaries after that, right? Just different.
I'll try to find some short stories. If you guys out there have any other scary series that you really like, that you think are really spooky, let me know and we can do another read through. But I think I want to take a break with the full series and just do a few that are just their own story. Just like a
one
short
episode
each.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I can't wait to hear what happens at the end because I'm invested. I will be listening this Sunday. It's a wild story.
It's been a time.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah. Well, anything out there that you guys want us to do an episode on?
Yes.
Something you've heard of, whether you're more interested in, curious about. We also still take the reader stories as always. So yeah, don't hesitate. Reach out to us, and you never know, you might make one of our episodes.
That's right. And follow us on the socials, like we said, and we share a lot on the socials, so we'll be sharing more about what's coming up next week. And of course, don't miss the Sunday Scaries, and tell your friends about us and share. Repost some of our social media so that we can get the word out to more people. So with that, I guess we'll say goodbye, Sirens listeners. Thank you for listening and tuning in. And we just love you guys. We love doing this together, and we love sharing our love of the paranormal. So we'll just say goodbye and stay spooky. Bye, guys.